What's up, kitten cats? So I'm here today to do a bit of a competition season slash prep season recap video. Kind of what inspired this video was throughout my bikini prep series, I had a lot of requests from people saying, oh, you should do, a sort of time lapse of your physique updates so we can see your progress throughout your whole prep since you had a pretty long prep. And I thought that was a really solid idea. So what I decided to do was I compiled, physique update footage, show footage, all that stuff from my past season and compiled it into a video. And I wanted to use this time to show a bit more about, to show you guys the progress that occurred over my prep physically, but also just show and talk a bit more about, what my prep looked like, how I prepped, what it entailed, etc., etc. And a couple prefaces to this video. Obviously this video is a lot of, physique updates, it's a lot of show footage, etc., etc. And I never want that to come off as bragging or boasting or anything like that regarding like placements or competing, but rather to serve as, an example of, what progress can look like over a prep, what you can achieve when you commit to something. And also it just gives me something to look back on as well. So a lot of times I look back on my old videos when I'm in need of some motivation because I found that the best motivation ever comes from yourself and your own personal journey. So, it is for me as well to look back on one day, down the line when I need that little boost. And yeah, it just gives me something to look at. And then another preface before I start talking about the prep itself. For those of you guys that have been around for a while, I know I do have some new subscribers, just hi, welcome, hello. But those of you that have been around for a while, you know that I prepped for a really long time. But I just want to preface this for everyone that a 36-week prep is not normal for bikini. It's not standard, it's not required, and I don't recommend it even though I did it and had a fairly good time with it. My body and mind responded really well to it, but it's still not standard. And I never want to prep that long again. It's just not optimal. I would rather be in a growing period for a longer period of time. I don't want to prep for 36 weeks again. And again, I don't recommend it. It's not normal. Don't ever think that you have to do that in order to compete, or don't ever think that you have to just generally diet for 36 weeks in order to get fit or whatever. Like that is not, no. You don't have to do that. And please don't think that you should prep or diet or train or whatever a certain way just because I do it and that's what works for me or has worked for me in the past, or because you see someone else on social media dieting or training or prepping a certain way, etc., etc. We're all different. We all have different journeys, and I just want to share a little bit of mine. So let's jump into things. So first thing I want to talk about with weight, I'm going to try and put together a little graph because I'm a nerd to pop up on the screen here. But I started out at 148 pounds. I am 5'9". And then I ended my prep 36 weeks later. I got down to 118 on my final show day. So with regards to weight, what I really wanted to touch on here is the overall progression of my weight loss was fairly linear in terms of month to month. The trend was a downward trend in my weight. However, daily weight trends were not. So a lot of times people get caught up in day-to-day fluctuations without looking at the bigger picture. So something I really learned this prep was true objectivity with my weight. Not attaching any sort of emotions to weight or weight fluctuations, etc. And learning to look at the bigger picture because daily fluctuations do happen. A 3 to 5 pound fluctuation within a day happens sometimes, and you can't freak out about that. You can't stress out about that. So while my overall progression from month to month was linear, my daily fluctuation, my daily progression was not necessarily linear. If your goal is weight loss, if you're prepping or if you're dieting down, as long as the overall trend over the long term is downward, then you're on track. If you're trying to gain weight, as long as the overall trend is upward, you're on the right track. That is my little bit as far as weight. Learn to be objective with the scale, learn to look at the bigger picture, all of that jazz. So I wanted to go ahead and start the video compilation that I put together. So I'm gonna be looking at the video that I have up here as well as some of the notes that I made. This is gonna be a bit lengthier of a video, so just hopefully if you're joining me, you have a solid bit of time to sit down, enjoy your breakfast or whatever, or if you have a longer cardio session today, this is a perfect video for that. But yeah, here we go with the video stuff. So This was the first physique update that I ever posted. This was about 20 weeks out from the Arnold. Like I said before, I'm 5'9". I started out at 148 pounds and I started out at around 2,300 calorie intake. I wasn't doing any cardio when I started prep. We did start prep with a 500 calorie cut from the get-go. For me, the start of prep is always the hardest. Hold on, let me turn the volume off. For me, the start of prep is always the hardest. Getting the ball rolling for me is the most difficult part. I pretty much have to like drop kick the ball down the hill instead of just gently let it roll. My body is very stubborn at the beginning of preps, and I find that I have to personally push harder and struggle a little bit more at the beginning and then coast in, so to speak, more towards the end. So I went from, I try to do, you know, month to month lapses here. So this was around, I think this was around January. No, this is January. So the one before was December. This is around January. I was losing about 5 to 6 pounds per month, which is pretty good progress. That didn't continue throughout the entirety of prep, but I would say the first 3 to 4 months, it was about a 5-pound loss each time, each month. And so this was February. This was actually almost March. This was 8 days out from the Arnold, if you can see my little countdown in the back. This was after we'd really gotten into the groove of my diet, really gotten into my lower carb, higher fat approach, which I will talk more about later, but that's really what worked for me this prep. And so this was after a solid bit on that protocol. And as you can see, things tightened up significantly. So yeah, we really fell into the groove with the higher fat, lower carb approach. And this for me, from an energy standpoint, from a strength standpoint, from a physique progress standpoint, this was really the optimal approach for me in terms of diet. And, you know, long term, being that low carb is not sustainable. And again, I'll talk more about that later, but it really works from a prep standpoint. So here we are, first show of the season at the Arnold. I went from 148 pounds at 20 weeks out to 126 pounds on stage for the Arnold at finals. This was an international show, so there was international judging, there were international competitors, which was really, really cool. And we also had to do the international back pose as opposed to the standard bikini back pose. And we also had to be rather adaptive, as you'll see here. This was footage from finals, but they did this to us at prejudging as well. They told us at prejudging backstage that, yeah, we're gonna do quarter turns, and bikini in the NPC typically does not do quarter turns. This was an IFBB sanctioned event, so I don't know if that's a typical thing in the IFBB for a bikini, but yeah, you had to be a little bit adaptive at this show, and I think everyone at the show adapted very, very well to having that thrown at them. So for this show, this was my favorite show experience by far this entire season, and a lot of it wasn't even necessarily the placing. I did take second at this show, but it was the overall experience, especially going out on stage at finals on Saturday. First of all, I freaking love Arnold weekend, like it's a blast, but going out on stage at finals, being on the expo stage, seeing friends in the audience, seeing people from social media in the audience, you know, people that have supported me for such a long time, was so heartwarming. I walked out on stage and my heart just, even more so than usual, and I just felt filled with so much gratitude for the support that I receive, you know, from my close friends, but also from, you know, people who have followed me on social media. And again, just the intense amount of gratitude I felt after this show. Overall, the experience was amazing, and getting to meet so many of you that entire weekend was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And so this show was a very, very memorable one for sure, like outside of placing. So that was the Arnold. And let's see, so after the Arnold, I had an 8-week break between the Arnold and my next show, which was the Kentucky Derby. And during this period, we did take a bit of a diet break. So since I had such a long time between shows, we put in more food, we took out cardio, I had more time to relax. My weight did come up. We brought it up to about 131 in this 8-week little time span of our diet break. I would say that the actual break itself lasted about 3 weeks, and we kicked it back into full prep mode about 4 or 5 weeks out from the Derby. I was also prepping while I was in Los Angeles on vacation, but I was still able to fully enjoy that experience and to enjoy my time while I was there. No, I didn't get to enjoy, you know, all of the delicious Los Angeles foods except for that night at Umami Burger and getting froyo with Robin and Jasmine, but you know, it was still an amazing trip, and it was really good for my body to just chill and relax that was excellent. It really, I've benefited a lot this prep from just spending quality time with people and de-stressing that way, which that's really important to do during a prep. Here we are at the Kentucky Derby. My stage weight at this show was 122 pounds, so about 4 pounds down from the Arnold. At this show, this was actually my 2-year competition anniversary, so this was the first show I ever did in 2014. I took home first place in my open class. I also took home first place in my collegiate class and the collegiate overall, so that was a huge blessing. And so here we are 3 weeks later at Junior USA's in Charleston. Junior USA's was a pro qualifier. This was, my stage weight at this show was 120. Only the top 3 in the overall get their pro card. So while I did win my class, I did not win my pro card. I did not win top 3 in the overall. And I was if you guys remember from that video, I was super duper hard on myself after that experience, at least initially. And then I kind of had to pull back and remind myself of my overall long-term journey as a competitor. So, you know, a year prior at Junior Nationals in Chicago, I got second to last call-outs. And then a year later came to Junior USA's and won my class and got to compete in the overall. So, you know, one thing I always want to reiterate to you guys is, yes, we're always striving to, you know, be our best selves and to be more and to do more, but we also have to remind ourselves where we've come from. And, you know, when we're feeling frustrated, when we're feeling like we're not enough, remember that we are enough and that we have made progress and we will continue to make progress, but not if we get down on ourselves. So I really had to, you know, kind of come back and remind myself, hey, Emily, you've come a long way. You know, be happy with where you've come. You know, it's okay to not be satisfied. It's okay to want more, but appreciate what you've accomplished as well. So after Junior USA's, Nick and I, we kind of took a couple days before we decided 100% for sure, but we decided, you know, based on how my body was responding and how my mind was responding, that we were going to go ahead and make the push for Junior Nationals. You know, we figured if I had any shot at getting my pro card, it would be at Junior Nationals, and to just give it one final push, one final shot at a pro card. And I will say, you know, this entire prep, I was astonished with how good I felt physiologically and mentally, but I will say the 3 weeks leading into Junior Nationals from Junior USA's was when I started to finally feel dieted and finally feel the effects of prep and to just finally feel drained and ready to be done dieting. But I did come in the best I ever looked at Junior Nationals, and so it was 100% worth it to me to make that final push to get on stage at Junior Nationals. And it was an amazing time. It was a very competitive show. I would say it was a bit more competitive than USA's. And this show was really awesome because I got to spend some really quality time with social media friends. I got to spend a lot of great time with, you know, Taylor and Stephanie and Emily and Amanda and Marie, and it was just so much fun. Again, this was an overall great show experience, spending time with people that I love to be around. That's really what makes the competitive experience for me, is not only being on stage. Obviously the stage part is my #1 love, but getting to share that with people that I love and love to spend time with is just, it's priceless to me. So I did end up taking 4th at that show, and it was a really great end to my season. I was very happy with how the season ended. And yeah, it was a solid experience, and it really set me up mentally and physically to enter my growing season. So that's it for the, you know, video talk over. I do want to get into a little bit more detail about, you know, my prep in general, diet, cardio, training, etc. So my diet, we started out, like I said, with a typical 500 calorie cut, but we didn't really fall into, you know, the solid progress until we hit that groove with my high fat, low carb approach. Now with this, you know, there are a lot of girls that have been really open on social media about how low carb they've had to get. And I've talked to a lot of them personally. You know, I know a lot of them personally. I'm friends with them personally. And something that's been different between us is that I have a lot higher fats than a lot of these girls have been able to have, and my body responded really well to that. So fat is a very calorically dense nutrient. It has over twice the calories of carbs. So I think the fact that my fats stayed a lot higher, even though my carbs were super low, helped me to not feel as dieted, to not, you know, feel as crappy, to not lose as much strength, etc., etc. And for me personally, I feel like everyone is a little bit preferential in terms of one nutrient over the other. I personally find that I'm a more fat preferential person from an energy standpoint, from a strength standpoint, from a physique standpoint. I just respond a lot better to fats in general. And that's something that is different for every individual, but I think hitting that groove with having my fats high, even though carbs were low, it helped things move around optimally. So like I said, things really started progressing once we took that approach and were consistent with that. And I personally don't feel the effects of a diet really until my fats drop as opposed to carbs. And I think this also really helped, you know, keeping good omega fats in, keeping good essential fats in, helped me from a recovery standpoint as well. It helped my joints. It helped my strength stay high. I think it just, like I said, guys, I really feel like we just hit my groove with that. And so in that though, I do want to make it clear that being that low carb is not sustainable for a long-term period. Even though my calories were in a good spot, which I will get more into in a second, my calories were in a good spot, but I need more carbs and overall calories, especially right now, to grow. However, from a prep standpoint, the high fat, low carb approach really worked well for me, but again, it's not sustainable for the long term. And talk about cardio. So this prep, if you remember from my last prep from about a year ago, I was doing all track sprints. All high intensity interval track sprints. That was my only cardio. And this prep, I did not do that at all. I did not step on a track a single time, and I'm not mad about it because it just, that last prep, that cardio was not optimal from a recovery standpoint, from a physique standpoint, none of it. So this prep, I did less hit. I did some hit still. It was less hit than I had done in the past, and I did more list this time. So hit is high intensity interval training and list is low intensity steady state. So I did a lot more steady state cardio this prep, and I think this really helped because, especially with the running and the sprinting that I did last prep, running and particularly sprinting is very eccentrically taxing. And there's a large recovery component. There's a large recovery component to hit in general, but especially sprints due to the eccentrically taxing nature of them, and the fact that they are high intensity. They take a lot of time to recover from, and I just wasn't getting that recovery, so my strength went down the crap hole, and it was just a bad time. Overall, that prep, my joints really took a hit from the eccentric load that sprinting put on them. So I think incorporating more lists and not doing those track sprints, and I'm not saying the track sprints are bad, they just require more recovery. You know what, sometimes you just have to push and do hit. That's part of the game. But I think having more lists contributed to better recovery, contributed to having healthier joints, contributed to retaining more muscle, which was really important for me since my prep was so long. And also it's just much less mentally draining than hit. You don't really have to like psych yourself up to do steady state cardio. I find that for myself personally, I have to do more of the psyching up when it comes to, you know, really hard intervals. So just all around, the list was a bit more optimal for me this time around. And especially keeping strength high also helped to maintain more muscle as well. All right, so back to diet for a hot second. That's the last thing I'll talk about before we get into some of the growing season stuff. In terms of calorie intake, from start to finish, like I mentioned at the beginning, I started at 2,300 calories after my reverse diet. And to finish before my loads during peak week, I had to get down to around 1,400 calories. My peak week loads range from about 1,800 to 2,200 calories, just depending on the show. But again, I had to get down to about 1,400 calories to get stage lean. A lot of girls had to get, you know, 1,000 or below to get stage lean, so that I'm glad that my calories were able to stay a little bit higher than a lot of people that I've spoken with. That's still not something that you can grow on or that I could maintain, but I have observed that every prep I end at around 1,400 calories. So regardless of how lean I've gotten during a prep or how not lean I've gotten during a prep or how high my calorie intake was at the end of my reverse diet, I've had to get to around 1,400 calories every single time. So I think that there is some validity in the idea that we all have, you know, a kind of set point that we have to diet to in order to get lean. And some people just have to diet on lower calories than others, regardless of what they're able to get up to. So we'll see if that prevails in future, you know, preps, future reverse diets, etc., etc. But speaking of reverse diets, let's get into growing season. So I've mentioned this briefly in other videos as well as on Instagram, but I just want to talk about it here since that's what this video is dedicated to. In terms of my physique goals, my biggest #1 goal is glute growth. When you look at, especially at the Junior Nationals show, when you look at my physique compared to those who are earning their pro cards, especially in my height class even, I need larger glutes, I need more developed glutes. My front is pretty solid and my upper body is pretty solid, but I lose it in the glutes. And at Bikini, glutes are everything. So, booty season is here. So, along with some booty gains, we're also trying to grow, thicken, develop my upper hamstrings as well as my adductors. Another thing is, while I don't need a ton of upper body size, I do need to add a little bit to my rear delts just to help balance out my back pose a little bit. My delts from the front, they are fairly balanced, but I feel like from the back they could use a bit more size and development. Also trying to stay a little bit leaner during my growing season to give myself a better starting point for my next prep, just seeing how lean I did need to get. There's nothing wrong with how I started this prep. There's nothing wrong with the body that I had in that first physique update, but just to set myself up more optimally for future preps so that I don't have to lose, 27 pounds again, 28 pounds again. Setting myself up in a leaner state for my next prep is going to be a bit more optimal. Even though I'm hoping at least my stage weights are heavier due to muscle gain. It better be heavier or I'm gonna be pissed. It will be heavier. It will. And how we're achieving that with regards to training, I've talked to you guys about how I'm doing one of Robin's glute programs. She is handling my glute programming. So the current phase really focuses on glute hypertrophy as well as really focusing on mindful, concentrated glute contractions. So that is something that I've struggled with is, getting good glute activation and getting good glute squeeze in exercises. So that is the reason for, the more hypertrophy focused phase and the mindful glute contraction development phase. Future programs will have some more strength work incorporated, but again, this is just this first program and I will just keep sharing with you guys as things progress. So right now it's a hypertrophy focus, and when that changes, I will keep you guys updated. In terms of upper body programming, I'm doing my own upper body programming because I feel like that's kind of my forte. But I wanted to outsource to Robin just because in terms of lower body and glute growth, because I know she's excellent at that. In terms of nutrition and cardio, I'm doing 0 cardio right now. That was the first change we made when we went into a growing season, was you just cut out all my cardio. In terms of nutrition, things are a little bit more sensitive due to especially the length of my prep. But I'm happy to announce that I am 110 carbs over what I was regularly consuming during prep. So he added that in pretty quickly off the bat over the last 3 weeks. So that feels really, really excellent. It is a bit of a digestive adjustment, having carbs back in, but you know what? That's okay. It'll all balance out. The body adapts. But yeah, I definitely have a lot more energy from not doing cardio and just from having more food. But free meals and guesstimating macros have a time and a place, but right at the start of a reverse diet is not exactly the place for that, for me at least. This is where personal variability comes into play. Some people reverse more strictly and some people don't. Whatever your preferred approach, whatever is optimal for you, that's okay. Rock it, do it. But for me personally, especially given how long my diet was, I'm taking things a bit more slowly this time. I'm not trying to prolong a harsh diet or prolong a super low carb approach, but just being as optimal as we feel we can be. So moving into what I've been talking about on Instagram, what my growing season is all about, what my life is all about right now, is what I have deemed my irrefutable pursuit. And so what this stemmed from is, thinking of growing season goals, all of that stuff. Next time I get on stage, my goal is to be irrefutable. I don't want the judges to be able to deny that I have a pro physique and I have earned my pro card, because my IFBB pro card is what I want and it's what I'm going to get. and that's what I'm working for. So right now, my goal with my nutrition, my training, my recovery, the goal with all of that is to optimize everything and to tailor everything to building my pro physique, to building that irrefutable physique. And you know what? There is no off season. I know when I want to compete again. I know when I'm stepping on stage again, and I know what I need to work on in order to get there. So it's not an off season, it's just a growing season. You don't have to go into a growing period knowing when you're gonna step on stage again. Like, a lot of people don't, and that's totally okay. But for me right now, like, I like having a plan set in place. I like knowing, you know, what's going on, what's going down, and you know, that drives me. There is no off season for me right now, and I know that I won't be irrefutable without a solid, dedicated, and committed growing period. I have to be relentless in my pursuit of growth. So with that, something that I've also talked about on Instagram is my tip for you guys. I don't know if I've talked about it in a video, but my tip: tenacity, intensity, purpose. See how that spells out tip so nicely. But you know, before I train every single day, I go in and I sit in my car before I go in and I declare my intent for that workout. I'm like, okay, what is the purpose of this training session today? You know, being points away from my pro card, points away from my pro card, especially at Junior USA's, it sucked, yeah, but it also happened for a reason. You know, God has a plan for everything. God's timing is everything. And I think a big part of this reason that I didn't get it was it not getting my pro card and being so close to it, like that I could physically taste it almost. It relit my fire. Like, it made me so excited after I got over being pissed, like after I got over being like, why I didn't get my pro card. But it made me so excited to grow. It gave me such a sense of purpose going into growing, and this is the most excited I've been to train and to grow in the longest time, and it just feels good. And you know, I've been taking that, and part of why I love bodybuilding is it helps me draw so many parallels to my everyday life. But I'm taking that tip and I'm applying it to every area of my life. You know, business growth, my school growth, you know, school's about to start up again. I'm really trying to grow my brain and approach my education with tenacity, intensity, and purpose. I'm trying to approach my business and my coaching with tenacity, intensity, and purpose. So much that I can't even speak. And the same with my personal relationships. I'm taking that and I'm channeling it into every area of my life. And I'm like getting choked up speaking because it's just like, that's how intense I feel about this. And just this excitement that I feel about my life right now, it makes me so joyful. Like, I feel this intense sense of abundance. Maybe it's the carbs, I don't know. But I just feel this intense sense of abundance, and I feel tenacious, I feel intense, and I feel so purposeful, like every single day so far. And it's like being reawakened. Feeling this sense of abundance and this much excitement for my life right now makes me so excited to share it with you guys. And one of my big goals with this is not just to, you know, share with you how I'm growing my pro physique and how I'm going about diet and training and whatever, but I want to help ignite your personal fire for your training, for your health, and for your life, because I feel so much passion about my life right now, and I want to help channel that to you guys. So take a tip from me and let's become irrefutable together in all areas of our lives. So that's kind of going to wrap it up for this video. That has been my competition season recap. My prep recap, going into a little bit more detail about how I prepped this time around. I hope that gave you guys some perspective and just an idea of how things were for me. Everything is different for every individual, but again, I hope the biggest takeaway from this channel is to, you know, learn what works for you, do what works for you, share your journey, and just always remember your personal progress and your personal growth. It's awesome, it's awesome to draw inspiration from other people, but like I said in the beginning, you know, I find the most authentic motivation comes from within ourselves. So if I can help awaken your inner motivation for yourself, then my job is done. And I'm so excited to embark on this part of my journey and bring you guys along with it. So that has been today's video. I hope it was somewhat helpful to you, beneficial to you. If you're really excited about something in your life right now, share it with me in the comments below. And again, like I said, take a tip from me. Let's be irrefutable together. If you like this video, leave a comment below about what you liked about it, what helped you about it, what you benefited from it. Leave a comment below, like I said, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right, time to be irrefutable. Love you so much. Bye.